Welcome to the Grand Prix Project Podcast.
All right, welcome once again to the Grand Prix Project Podcast. This is the Spanish Grand Prix F1 review with me, your host, Andre, and the big bro, Thanos.
What's happening, bro? What's happening?
What's going on?
All my
Hey, bro.
nephews.
They're good, bro. They're good. They're sleeping, so that's why I'm recording now.
for the man of the house Ace wake up.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, all right, then cool.
He's a wild boy.
Definitely a wild boy.
Yeah, so what's good, man?
Bruh, we here. Gonna record. We here. Just that's all I can say right now. We're still here. We're still breathing. So everything is good, man. Just looking forward to getting into this review because it was an interesting weekend to say.
To say the least.
It was an interesting weekend and it was an interesting race. So we can just
and some very interesting penalties.
Penalties are non-penalties.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it a penalty, man. It's just true, but we touch on that topic when we get to it.
Yeah. All right, and you wanna kick it off?
Yeah, man. So obviously, this was the first weekend of the new that the whole flexi wing debate that's been ongoing since probably like what the third race of the season or something like that.
Yep.
And the technical directive came out and said, all right, by Spain comes Spanish Grand Prix, new tests. Was it previously they were allowed to flex the wing something like 15 millimeters or 16 millimeters. Now the new test means they can only flex it something like 5 millimeters. If you know 5 millimeters is small, you pretty much know it's not really
nothing.
It's pretty much nothing. But obviously everybody passed the test, and we know teams like McLaren ran their stiffer front wing in Imola. They used it during one of the practice session. I believe it was FP2 on Lando. I think he was second in the FP2 practice. Mercedes ran theirs weeks before. I can't remember which race they ran theirs, but they did. So when they came over the weekend, they didn't have to declare a new front wing because they'd already run it.
Yeah.
Ferrari, all the other teams did. But it's kind of funny. It didn't really make a difference to the outcome of the weekend.
It actually, I was waiting for it to get there. It's crazy how everyone thought that was one of McLaren's main weapon in the arsenal. Only for McLaren to go to extend the gap is the biggest gap we've seen so far this season.
In qualifying. Because what? For the whole, 8 races, the average qualifying gap between first and second was like less than a 10th. Or just say a 10th. Give it the higher side. And McLaren
only for Piastri to come with a stiffer wing and dunk 2 tenths, and that's crazy.
2 tenths. Well, funny enough though, the times were slower than last year's qualifying. Funny enough, the times were slower than last year qualifying. So, but that could be from many reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Track temperature, all of that stuff.
So, because they still use the same tires they used last year, but it didn't really change anything in terms of the pecking order.
Yeah,
McLaren was still quick.
Yeah, so the team
Red
that's
Bull was still quick.
And the team that's complaining needs to go find something else to complain about.
They'll never stop complaining, man. It's in the DNA. It's like I said once. What I find with Red Bull is, if somebody does something that surpasses them, they get jealous and angry and start to complain because they feel like, nah, there's no way you should be quicker than us. There's no way you should have come up with an idea that makes you quicker than us that we didn't think about. So now they got caught out. And the McLaren is still the quickest car. I still think Red Bull is still the second quickest.
Yeah.
again, because Max is basically Max. Mercedes and Ferrari, it swings around about with them. It depends on the day of the week. You know what I mean? So nothing really changed. You thought, because everybody was saying, this is going to affect McLaren more and it's going to bring Ferrari back in the game. When I heard it, I just laughed. I'm like, man, you guys haven't been watching Formula One long, have you? There was no way that was going to make a difference to McLaren's performance. And they just kind of like, yeah. Because I saw a tweet from somebody who, I think it was Alex Brundle, said he saw Rob Marshall in the pit.
Yeah.
And he must have asked him something about the front wing. I said, how is it going to impact on us and your team or whatever? And he said, Rob Marshall looked him square in the eye and said, what impact? Because I think Rob Marshall is the, I can't remember what he does for McLaren, but he's not the technical director. No, I think he's the technical director because Andre Stella is the team principal. So he pretty much kind of like, yeah, that shit ain't gonna do nothing to us, man.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like, yep, qualified, spank. You pretty much knew from FP1 that, yeah, this was never gonna, it wasn't gonna work. Because what I saw,
Rob Marshall is their chief designer.
Chief designer, there you go. I see Oscar did a time in I think it was FP2 where it's something like 7/10 faster than Charles, and I went, yeah, technical directive really did work. So it was kind of like a waste of time. And as Lewis said, even Lewis himself said, look, it was a waste of time. We knew it wasn't going to make a difference. So
It's a waste of time and waste of money.
Exactly, because that money could have gone to somewhere else in the department to do something. So they spent all that money building a new wing for the pecking order still to remain the same. So, it was kind of like a pointless exercise. But they had to try because Red Bull was crying. You know what I mean? So once Red Bull start crying, you have to do something to kind of like just to get them to shut up. So, let's see what.
All right, and so for the man of the weekend, Piastri, 5th race win of the season.
Yeah, the boy, you know what I mean? He's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing in the car that he has, and he's making it look somewhat effortless, if I'm being honest. Because you look at the qualifying lap with him on Lando, the overlay, Lando only missed last qualifying because of one corner, one single corner that was turn 5. When he exited turn 5, you showed the onboard, he had a snapper oversteer and he had to correct it. And just that one correction basically gave Oscar the 2/10 he needed and he just carried that straight to the to the line. Boom, he's on pole by 2/10.
Hey.
Sunday, he executed a flawless race. He didn't look like he was ever under threat. He looked, because again, he led from turn 1. Once he led turn 1, he pretty much knew he had control of the race. At one point, though, Max was kind of like really close to him about for the first 2 laps, 2 to 3 laps. Max had DRS on him at one point, and I thought, Max looked like he might have the pace, but then you just start seeing Oscar just kind of like, okay, let's start up the pace a bit, and you start to realize,
man was just prepping his tire and getting things under control to just dip. Oscar, man, he's got the Aussie grit, and the guy's just so cool. The way he goes about his business.
And I mean, isn't that what they say about Australians? They tend to be so laid back, whether it's like nothing really flusters them. So.
Yeah, the dude is so cool. The way he goes about his business. Whether he's winning, whether he's down in third, he's just so cool. I admire for such a young driver.
How old is he though?
And the way he goes about his business. Because you think a lot of drivers as young as him, right? And being in his first real championship fight, you'd have thought you'd have seen some flaws, right? but we're yet to see it, right? Even when he does it, even when he's not on pole, even when he's in third, or he still just goes about his business in a really calm way.
Yep.
Which is,
and again, I think that also the car plays a part in that because he knows how good the car is. He pretty much knows. Okay, if I have a bad qualifying and I qualify fourth or third or fifth, my car is good enough to know that I'll recover, basically be on the podium.
yeah, but I'm looking back at him from even before the car was this good. Even when the car wasn't, he was just this type of person, was just super calm, super collected, and just went throughout his weekend in a way with methodically, and he's just super calm. Like even after winning a race, he's just calm.
Yeah, it never seems like he celebrates.
It's something to admire, bro.
Yeah,
for such a young driver who's fighting for a championship.
He gives the impression of, I've been here before, so it's not really that big a deal. You know what I mean? He enjoys it, but then, as I said, been there, done that, worn the T-shirt and everything. And again, remember, he's won other lower categories because I'm sure he won F2.
Yeah, I think what it is, I think it's to the point where he's so mature where he knows that one weekend could change the whole trajectory of his season. I think he's one of them people who's just taking every weekend as it comes, and then see what happens at the end of the season. And if he's champion, that's when he's going to celebrate.
Yeah, because he lost prior to this past weekend. He lost. How many points did he lose to Lando? Lando won Monaco, and he finished third. So that's 10. And Lando finished ahead of him in Imola. So, and where did Lando got what? Second in Imola, he got third. So Lando took 13 points off him. Because remember, his lead was 16, and Lando took 13 points off him in 2 races. So whilst he's having a good run at the moment, his lead in the championship is pretty much nothing. It's nothing to think, okay, I have a bit of breathing room. Nah, he doesn't. Again, he could turn up to Canada in 2 weeks' time, finish third, Lando wins the race, they're both back level on points. Again. So, whilst he's been operating at such an high and efficient level, he can't relax.
And I'm sure he knows that, right? I'm sure he knows that. But yeah, I just admire the way he goes about his business. It's something for such a young driver. It's something to admire. It's something to look at and be like, wow. Because you have a lot of there's some drivers probably in that situation that they're making mistakes. They're flustered. If they don't qualify on pole, if you're not leading the race, they do stupid mistakes. But it's just like, from what I'm getting from him, it seems like, okay, this is what I've got this weekend. This is where I fit in. I just need to, if I have the pace of finishing third in the race, I just need to finish third. And he accepts that.
Yep.
Right? Because he knows that at the end of the day, it's just how you tally up the points at the end of the season. That's what's going to give you the championship.
So you have to just make sure you score points every single race weekend. You can't afford to have a bad weekend where you're not score points. Just as long as you're scoring points and you're accumulating points in the championship, come Abu Dhabi or even before Abu Dhabi, it tells you who's champion or not. So for now, like I said, I'm highly impressed with him. And whilst things are going good, that's fine. My thing is, because it's what it comes down to, will he encounter a moment in the season where things aren't going his way? How does he deal with those adversarial moments?
And I think, and you're right. And I think he's shown me enough to say that he could manage those things. Just his own demeanor. It looks like when those moments come, I don't think he's gonna get flustered. I think mentally the dude is mental tough. I think his mental fortitude is there, bro. He's super tough mentally from what I'm seeing.
Yep.
Right.
Definitely.
I think he's matured beyond his years as well. So when and if those moments come, I think he'll be okay.
And it also helps that he has Weber in his camp as well. Granted, Weber wasn't all that Weber, but Weber's been in a tighter challenge before in
Yeah.
10. So Weber can actually tell him, provide him with the necessary advice and direction in how to deal with scenarios when they arise, and that's good for him as well. So
Yeah. And even if
I
Weber
mean-
wasn't a A1, but Weber wasn't anything to mess with. Put it that way, right? And
Yeah.
he's got that in his corner. So
yeah,
right, so he'll be all right. Let's see how it pans out. But
yeah. Again, 5 wins, and he has now what, 4 poles? I believe he has now this year. Yeah, I believe he has 4. Yeah, because him and Max had 3 apiece, and Lando had 2. So now he has 4 poles, 5 wins, and he's been on the podium in every race except for Australia. And that was simply because of what happened with the sudden downpour, and then he had that spin and whatnot. That basically cost him a podium
yeah,
position. But he's putting together a good season, man.
yeah, man, it's a good season. He's stringing together.
Good season.
I like
it's
it.
likely he could go into the summer break having won maybe 6, 7 races. Easy.
Yep.
So, but outside of that though, the race in itself, the race on Sunday, I don't know what to make of it. It didn't really throw up much surprise, if I'm honest.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the safety car, in the end, it would have been probably Monaco 2.0.
No, I wouldn't say Monaco 2.0. I wouldn't. I think it was a better race than Monaco because Max made it an interesting race. Because Max and the strategy Red Bull went for the 3-stop, because no one's ever really, a 3-stop strategy around this track is pretty much a much slower race.
Yeah, but it didn't. Even when they went for that strategy, I didn't find myself feeling excited. I was just watching them still going around. Like, it never gave me. Only excitement I got from that race was after the safety car. It was boring up until that point.
True, because it was just a case of, okay, Max does this. Okay, McLaren just reacted and okay, we're gonna do this, and they pretty much covered him off the whole race. I think the best part of the race prior to the safety car was pretty much the start. Max got a brilliant start. Lando not so great. Took him at turn 1 and he was up into P2. Lewis took what? Lewis got who did he pass?
Antonelli. Was it Antonelli?
Yeah. Nah, I think he took George. He passed George. No, Lewis out qualified Kimi. Kimi was 6th. Lewis was 5th. George was 4th. So he took George on the first corner. I think the one who really had a good start was Charles, because he took Kimi and George on the same lap. The way he actually surprised George with where he decided to pass him going into turn 5.
Yeah.
I think George didn't see that one coming, and he just kind of like snuck it up the inside of him, boom, and he was in the top 5 by the end of lap 1. And then it just became a case of, okay, the McLarens and the Red Bull kind of like, okay, after a couple laps, just start to extend the gap, because I think whilst Lewis was in 4th, he didn't really have the pace to go with them guys.
Yeah.
I think he was also in somewhat of a tire preservation phase, because again, he was on used soft tires, so he couldn't really go hell's balls out, because these tires would have been done within no time, because he had to get them to a certain stint length so he could make a 2-stop work. But Charles looked like he had excess amount of pace behind him, but I didn't look like he was going to pass him even with that pace, because the only time he actually got close was in the DRS zone. but it never looked like he was going to pass him. And then obviously Charles read it in and was like, yo.
Yeah, well, the switch was, even if he wasn't good, the switch was correct. It was a correct move.
I don't know.
It was a correct move. Even if he wasn't going to pass, you could see that he had way more pace than Lewis. It was right. It was the right call.
What was Charles fighting for?
It's early. That's the thing. It's early in the race, right? Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of pace. It's only right to let him through, right? Because you never know what he's gonna do further up the road. You just don't want him to sit behind. Because let's face it, he was faster than Lewis. Lewis was slow. Like there's no two ways around it.
Not necessarily true, you know. Not necessarily
even
true.
If all right, so if you
hold on. Because if you look, once Charles passed him, obviously because Charles used soft was in a much better condition than Lewis's, because he didn't want the soft that Charles used. He didn't actually put a proper qualifying lap through it. He aborted the lap during his second run in Q2. So his was in a much better state, because after about I believe it was lap 15 or something like that, the times between him and Lewis started to stabilize, and they were pretty much matching each other. So I wouldn't say Charles was outright quicker than Lewis the weekend.
Where did Lewis finish again?
Where
did he finish again?
Charles.
Lewis.
Lewis finished actually 7th, but then got promoted to 6th, which we get to that part as to why. But I don't think Charles was that. When people said Charles was faster, Charles was faster on the opening stint because of his he had that better time. But eventually the times leveled off, and when you look at their second stints, when were both on medium tires, they were pretty much matching each other. And if anything, Lewis was actually quicker than him on the mediums.
So are you saying that if they didn't switch them, Lewis probably would have been in the third spot?
Honestly, I don't know. Maybe he would not. Maybe Charles would have actually eventually gotten him at some point, but Charles would have had to use his tires to get past him. So I don't know, but I don't think it's a case of whereby Charles just had the outright pace. They were mitigating circumstances.
Yeah, but yes, you're correct. But when you look at what was happening, right? Charles was all over the back of him, right?
Yeah.
So,
but he couldn't pass him.
But that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, they're losing time. So if you think the car behind has got more, just let him through. Like, whatever situation for Lewis, whether he was going through tire preservation mode, whatever, he was a slower car at the time, and it's only right to let the faster car through.
But again, my question is, what was Charles chasing? Let Charles through to do what?
He ended up third. That's why I asked you. Are you saying that if he didn't get let through, probably Lewis would have been on the podium? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because if he ended up on the podium,
it's possible. It's possible because, like I said, if you look at it, George couldn't even pass Lewis.
Yeah.
If you watch the first thing, George couldn't pass Lewis on track, and Charles couldn't pass Lewis on track either, despite having the fresher tires. He was only capable to get close because of the DRS zone. And when the team orders came over, if you look on that lap, Lewis had actually pulled out a good enough margin going on to that lap where they swap positions.
Yeah, but
where I think if that message hadn't come out, Lewis would have easily defended this position.
Yeah, but they're fighting and losing time. That's the issue.
Again, who were they fighting? Who was Charles racing with? Charles Race was never with the front three.
Ultimately, the thing is, right, we could argue this around in circles. Ultimately, whatever they did, helped with the safety car, and he ended up on the podium. If you're not saying that Lewis would have ended up on the podium, the call was correct because Charles ended up getting the podium.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's possible Lewis could have been on the podium if he had actually the team order message hadn't gone out.
Yeah, what I saw in that race, it looks to me, Charles. What I was seeing, it was the right call. Lewis was slowing him down.
And at that phase of the race, it looked like Charles had the better pace, and again, he had the better tires were in a better condition than Lewis. But once he got past and he built that himself a margin, their lap times pretty much leveled off, and they were pretty much matching each other.
But we wouldn't have known that. That's the thing, because if he had stayed stuck behind Lewis, the conversation would have been different. I think they should have let Lewis charge through because he seemed fast at the time. So
but they let him through, but it didn't really do anything for his
Yeah,
race.
but that's what I'm saying. We wouldn't have known that because the pace that he was showing, it wouldn't have been the right call to have him sit behind Lewis fighting.
Well, I don't know. I
know?
think it was probably too early in the race.
I
But they
think
did
it was
what
the
they
right
did,
call.
because Charles came on the radio and he basically instigated the whole thing, because he was saying, look, I sacrificed my qualifying so I could be quick in the race. And if, I don't know how much faster I can go if I'm not in front. And he pretty much begged the team to let him
But
swap position
that's
with
but
Lewis.
that's uncommon. That's common though, because if Lewis was in the same position, he would have been on the ringers doing the same thing.
I don't know.
Yes,
I don't
yes,
know.
Lewis does it. Lewis does it. If he's
When did
behind,
he
he's.
do it?
Look, so you're telling me Lewis has never been in a race where he feel like he's the faster car and he's on the ringers telling them to let him through? Yes, they all do it, bro.
Not on the opening couple of laps of the race. Maybe like later on down in the race. Again, if you look at somewhere like Canada, Hungary, was it 2017 or 2018 when Bottas was ahead of him, and they were chasing the Ferraris of Seb and Kimi, and he pretty loose said, look, I feel like I have more pace. Whatever. Because it was evidently clear that Bottas didn't have the pace. So he felt like, and he had the pace enough to chase down, but again, it's Hungary, he couldn't pass. The situation this weekend was, even when you let Charles pass, Charles was never in a race with the Red Bulls or the Red Bull or the McLarens. He was never going to beat any of them on pace.
Yeah, however, Lewis was slow, whereas like the Mercedes behind both. That's what they're trying to protect him against. Like, if we're gonna get in a fight, do we want our two drivers to be slow enough for the Mercedes to be on our tails, or do we let one through and let him cancel up the road? Right? Would you rather lose that against your two cars, lose it against a Mercedes or one? I guess that's probably where they took that decision from.
I guess, and also I think it was probably partly influenced by Charles as well. So he lobbied for it, and they did what they needed to do. But in the grand scheme of things, because I believe Fred came out and said they did it because they were on different strategy, because Charles only had two medium tires, new mediums. Lewis had one. So they felt like, okay, let him go, because obviously you're running two different tire strategies. But it is what it is. They weren't really fighting for anything in that race, to be honest, because without the safety car and what transpired later, Charles was never going to be on the podium. It's very likely that he would have actually gotten caught and passed by George Russell, because when he stopped on that his first stop and went on to the medium, he only did 21. I believe he only did 21 laps.
Yeah.
On those mediums, and he burnt out those tires, because if you look at his lap time, probably about 4 to 5 laps before he pitted for his second stop, he was losing a chunk of time to Lewis, and I think that's why they brought him in. So he literally burnt out his tires, because when you look at the lap times when they were both on new mediums, Lewis was the quicker of the two. Lewis was the quicker of the two.
Yeah, and I'm quite sure if it had come down to the point where Lewis was faster, where he crawled up, where he drove up to the back, they probably would have switched the cars again.
But here's why I wouldn't even want them to switch, because they weren't in a fight with the front three cars. So what's the point switching positions if one person is faster than the other? It's the same result you're going to get.
Because like what I said, they still got to be defending against the car that's behind, which is the Mercedes. You never know if it's going to switch on its tires. All of a sudden, you find both of your cars in this dogfight. Now they're losing to the Mercedes. So maybe that's where they took it from, bro. If we're going to lose it against a Mercedes, make one of the cars, not both.
Maybe.
So maybe they wasn't looking at the cars up front. They were looking at what was going on behind them.
Yeah, I guess so, because they pulled on Lewis' first stint. They actually stopped him much earlier than he needed to stop. Because when he came in, he was like, why you stopped me so early? I still could have gone. And I felt like they probably should have just gone along with him, because he had nothing to gain. He was not losing anything by them doing that. So I don't know. In the grand scheme of thing, I didn't really think it made a difference, because again, without the safety car, they were going to finish 4th and 6th. And the only reason why Lewis would have finished 6th, because again, Mercedes pulled the undercut and pit George early because he had a brand new set of soft tires. And I think his out lap was blistering. And then the next lap after that, I think he was like 2 to 3 seconds faster. So he had pretty much jumped Lewis by that time. So they had nothing more to gain. So that's why they went longer with him. So in the grand scheme of thing, I didn't really think it was gonna make a difference to the Ferrari race, whether they had swapped him or not. But like you said, they probably looked at it on the basis of, well, rather jump we get undercut by one of our
Yeah.
cars rather than get both cars undercut by George. So, you know, it is what it is. This is what Ferrari's fighting for right now this year. Scraps. You
Yeah.
know, pray, just pray that something goes their way and they get they pick up the odd podium here or there because they're not really in the championship, are they?
Yeah.
It's not a championship, and I think it's extremely disappointing when you consider that they finished the season last year only 14 points behind McLaren, and now they find themselves nearly 200 points behind. That's just
The position that Ferrari's in, right? Since we're on, I might as well just address it now than later. The position that Ferrari's in, anything less than the championship is a failure.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
second, third, anything less than Ferrari winning, even if not the drivers, anything less than
Something.
them winning the constructors is a failure.
It's a failure. But the
It's a
reason why
failure.
I say it's even more disappointing is the fact that they were 14 points away from winning the constructors last year, and they found the start this year where they found themselves at one point they were fourth in the championship table, and the only reason why they're now second is because Max is doing all the scoring for Red Bull,
And
and
Mercedes,
McLaren and for Mercedes, Kimi has 3 races in a row. Kimi hasn't scored a point.
reliability
Imola.
issues.
Where did he go? Imola, Monaco. So the triple header, Kimi didn't score a point in that triple header. George scored points, I believe, in 2 of the 3 races. So without that, Ferrari wouldn't have been second in the championship. And I see people celebrating and people talking about, it's some sort of, it shows resilience, and I'm like, yo, that doesn't show any sort of resilience at all. If anything, that's embarrassing. That nothing in that it should be celebrated because again, you were 14 points away from winning the championship
And
against McLaren, and to come now and see McLaren nearly 200 points ahead of you, that's embarrassing.
yeah, there's nothing to celebrate. Anything less than Ferrari winning a championship is a failure.
And put
That's
it
just what it is. There's no two ways about it. There's no, oh, we're second in the championship. No. For Ferrari, anything less than winning the championship, and it doesn't have to be the drivers, right? Any one of them, right?
any one of them.
It's a failure.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's I was gonna say something a while ago, and I completely If you look at last year at this point, Ferrari already won 2 races and had multiple podiums. They've only had 2 podiums this so far in the main race so far this year. Just 2 out of 9 races. And all the talk we're hearing about coming with new rear suspension for, I believe they said Canada or Silverstone or whatever, and I'm like, yo, they might as well just don't come with anything at all. Because what are they gonna fight for? They're not gonna catch McLaren. McLaren is pretty much gone.
Yep.
We pretty much know the drivers and the constructors championship I think it's going to go to McLaren, both of them. It's a question of who's going to win the drivers. But I think the constructors is pretty much, it's done.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Yeah,
Forget about it.
That's wrap
And
with a bow tie, with a red bow on it, and delivered. They don't ain't picked it up yet.
yeah, it's already at walking. They just need to come on Christmas and just open the Christmas present. They got an early Christmas present. Imagine you got a Christmas present from June.
And Ferrari
you-
and McLaren about to do back to back.
Back to back. You know what I mean? And you have to hold your hand up to them. Because coming from where they've come from at the start of these regs, where they were pretty much nowhere. And they've slowly but surely implemented a plan, worked towards it, found a philosophy, developed on that philosophy upon year upon year upon year. Now it's bearing fruit.
And it makes
Whilst at
sense.
Ferrari has changed concept pretty much every year of these regulations.
And if you look at McLaren, one of the things that I admire about McLaren, right, is their leadership.
Yep.
Their leadership seems to be so in sync. Unless there's stuff going on that's not in the media, but they seem like a well-oiled, well-in-sync machine, which is why they're where they're at right now. Because if you look at all the other top teams, right? If you look at all, I would say Mercedes too, so to an extent, but for McLaren, when you look at Ferrari, there's always whether it's leadership change, something going on at Maranello with ownership. There's always something, bro. They just don't seem to be in sync and on the same song sheet. And obviously, even when Red Bull was winning, they still had their dramas from what you heard. Adrian Newey and them with Marco, and then the Christian Horner situation. McLaren, you just don't hear these things. They seem to just be about the business. And their leadership team, Zach Brown and Andrea Stella and them, and co. The way they carry themselves, bro, they're not reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah, they've finally built a solid foundation in terms of team structure. You know, from the head downwards, everything now seems to be working in sync. Everybody's on the same page, and that's what you need if you're going to win a championship in Formula One.
It looks like
you need that synergy running throughout the whole entire team, and that's what they have right now. And like I said, coming from where they've come from at the start of these regs, I mean, at one point they couldn't even score a point.
Yeah, and the way I view a team like Ferrari, when you look at McLaren, I see 4 horses pulling a carriage in the same direction. In Ferrari, you got 4 horses, no pun intended, prancing horse. You got 2 at the front, 2 at the back.
Oh, you have 2 at the side as well, man.
Right, and they're pulling in different directions.
I think Ferrari pulling it at the 4 main points.
Yeah, they're just pulling in all different directions. Because you could see that McLaren found a concept, realized that the base concept is good. We just need to build on it for a couple of years, and now they're reaping the benefits of that. And
Ferrari
that's something that Ferrari didn't do.
Changed
which
the
is
concept every single year of this regulation, and which is why I'm changing it this year. Literally confuses the hell out of me, because you've not gotten it right the previous 4 years. So why do you think you're going to get it right in year 5?
Yeah. And on that note, that's it for Ferrari. I don't think they should even get more time, bro, because,
Well, okay.
Unless you got more things to say about them.
We need to discuss the whole Lewis thing at Ferrari, because it's absolutely strange what's going on with his performance. And Lewis is my guy, and I don't ever want to do this. At some point we're gonna, because every time we're pretty much hearing the same thing. There's something wrong with the car. There's this, there's that, and he finally qualified Charles for the first time since China, right? And I mean, he did a brilliant job to qualify him, because at one point, looking at how his FP2 and FP3 runs looked, it didn't look impressive. We thought he was going to struggle.
Yeah.
And even Q1, it looked like he wasn't going to make it out of Q1. But he made it all progress, and he did a really good job. I mean, at one point, he was provisional 3rd until Max and George came and bumped him down to 5th.
Yeah.
But in the race, I don't think Lewis is that slower than Charles. I don't think that's the case. But there's something fundamentally wrong with that car that's affecting his performance. You watch his onboard. The car, even Nico Rosberg noticed it and was saying it during company that, that's not a good car to drive. It's you're seeing 1 minute you're seeing oversteer, 1 minute you see understeer, 1 minute it's snappy, and this is the thing we've been saying even before Rosberg saying, because I watch his races on board, his qualifying, and everything from his on board, and you can literally see that in one corner it gets oversteer and understeer. Sometimes it's and you find when it's fat with fuel, its pace is really bad. But when it gets to a certain range in the fuel range, like then you see the performance starts to change. Because even Sunday, when he finished, dude, he got passed by a Sauber, and I'm thinking, as people are saying, yeah, but the Sauber was on new tires, and I'm like, yo, even a Ferrari on old tires, it should still be quicker than a Sauber on new tires. But the way he got passed, it was like, what's going on? And I think, if the race had started 2 laps earlier, he'd have also gotten passed by Ajar because he barely finished ahead of Ajar. And he was complaining that, there's something wrong with the car. Thankfully, Fred came out and said, yeah, there was some damage he picked up on the car, and that pretty much cost him performance. And this goes to show how terrible these regs are, that you pick up a small floor damage, and it pretty much, all your pace is gone.
So I'm curious, where did he pick up that damage?
No, that's the question. That's a good question. It's possibly he could have ran over a curb, or he could have ran over some debris. Because remember, there was a collision with.
And it could also be to save face.
No, I don't think so.
Also be to save face.
No, the way he got past on that final stint after the safety car, he literally had no pace, none whatsoever. So I don't think it's a case of there was something fun. I don't think it was they were trying to save face. There was definitely something wrong with the car. But I need to see more, man. But it's just Ferrari. I just think I think the problem is just that car. But I'm gonna give him the whole season. It's a new environment again. And if you look at all the people who have moved teams, he's performing the best out of the lot of them. So, that's my Lewis rant.
What the thing, to be honest, because I need to move on from Ferrari. What I see with Lewis, right? As I said, Lewis is gonna have to get a perfect car to do anything, right? I still think if I go back to his final 2 seasons at Mercedes, we're having these similar issues, and then there's certain races where like a Silverstone where it just come alive. And if I start seeing that in a Ferrari, if for the rest of the season I see there's a race where it comes alive, and then it doesn't happen for another couple of races, unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to start looking at the driver more.
I'm not doing that.
I'm
not ready to do that. I still think. I mean,
no, I'm giving him the whole season. But if, as I said, if we go into next year, right? Because the thing is that we could say, right, it's a new environment, right? Because bear in mind, when the season started, it was figuring out how stuff works, software, find his way around the steering wheel to know what things do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's about to take that exam to pass that, right?
What do you mean?
If those couple races was the learning, so I'm just it's just a figure of speech. He's about to take the exam to pass that, so probably the next 2 races we can't use that excuse no more.
No, I think...
Right? So, if he took those races to figure out that part of life, right? And then, because I get it, there's going to be a learning curve when you change environments, right? Especially if you're in an environment where the car is trash, and then there's other stuff that you got to deal with, right? So it's going to be a steep learning curve for me. It is a steep learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a point where we're just going to have to move all of these excuses out the way.
Obviously.
And then start looking at the man himself. Right.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a case of where Lewis has fallen. Has he lost a bit of pace? Absolutely. He's 40 years old. That's gonna happen. But because we've seen glimpses that the old Lewis is still there. We saw that in the China sprint race. We
And
saw
that's
that
the
in
problem. That's what I'm trying
we
to get
saw
at.
we saw it also in at Imola. So it's not like
And that's what I'm saying. What if there's only flashes that's left?
yeah, but again, no, I don't
No,
think that
I'm just because
nah.
I have to ask because ultimately, right? I just got to ask these questions, right? As a
Yeah.
neutral, because ultimately, we could use all the excuses are the reasons. Let's not say excuses. There's many reasons as to why he's probably going through these things, right? But at some point, all those got to go through the door with time, and then now it's gonna be we really have to look at, hey man, the first person you got to look at is his teammate, right?
Yeah.
And then when it gets to that part, is now how does that matchup play out, right? Because it's tricky because you can't say, well, he should be beating Charles when he's new to the environment, right? Which a lot of people are probably already saying, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, he was never really gonna come in and usurp Charles, just unseat Charles and just start them. That was never
Yeah,
gonna
that's
happen
crazy.
because Charles is no mug. But again, I don't think it's a case of glimpses. I just think when the car functions how he wants it to function or how he needs it to function, you see his pace. But right now the car is inconsistent in everything it does. It's
And
not good at anything other than being bad.
and one of the
So
questions, and when we're looking at the future for the regs, that's changing next year, right? One of the next question that a very important question that we have to ask is how much of Lewis's feedback is going to go to that new project compared to Charles.
Obviously it's gonna be about pretty much the same as anywhere else. It's not like they're gonna just focus on what he has to say. They just have to listen to what he has to say and try and Charles has to say and then try and build the car to the requirements of both of them, make it somewhat of a neutral.
Which is my question. Which is why I asked the question. I'm glad that you said that. Are they going to take the information? Because you got to remember, right? He might be there. He's there. But the feedback for developing the new car, whose feedback do they take
Well, again,
into consideration the most in that situation?
Well, again, because it's a new set of regulations and they have no data to work with, I don't know what feedback they can give. All they're going to do is whatever they put in the sim and they go in and they test it in the sim. They just have to tell them, okay, this is what the car does there, whatever, and then from that they try and build a picture and then try and build from there. So they're both coming from everybody's going to be starting from a fresh sheet of paper.
Oh yeah, that I know. As I said, yeah, you're right. I'm
think it's
referring
a
to
case
those input from Sims and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
You still have it because, especially if they're giving two different type of information.
Well, again, that's the team to actually, if they're giving two different sort of feedback, then it comes down to the team actually.
But you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that's really going to be a problem because they pretty much are somewhat require the same thing from the car. But let's see what happens. But I don't think we're going to.
So if they require the same
think,
thing, if they require the
think
same
it's-
thing and they're similar drivers, as what Charles says, we give similar input, we have similar driving style.
Yeah.
So why is this big offset between the two of them?
Yeah, because again, Lewis has never driven this car. Lewis turned up to the team when this car was pretty much already in production. What's he gonna do? Charles already has that knowledge of this car. He's been driving it since the regulation started. So for him, that's where his advantages lies. But again, it's not
Has he
like
been
Lewis
driving
is.
this car, or did we not know that
Yeah,
this is
he's
a
been
brand new car?
driving the Ferrari ground effects car since the regulation start. That's what I mean. So
Oh,
for Lewis, it's not like Lewis is miles off Charles's pace. He's
yeah.
not that far off. He's maybe 2 tenths, 3 tenths maximum. He's off. But again, that's Lewis not being comfortable in the car and the car not doing what he wants. So I think if it gets to a position where the car is now functioning how he wants and it's doing what he wants, that gap will be narrowed down drastically. So.
Yeah. All right, then. So let's see how Hamilton goes throughout the rest of the season. Let's see if Ferrari brings some, what do they call it, upgrades.
Yeah, they have to bring something.
And then see
they can bring to the team and see what happens.
Let's see, at least, even we're going to a new set of regulation. Let's see if they could even. Let's see if by the end of the season, the car is actually at least decent, where the drivers could have some fun and actually try to win a race or be fast. Let's at least see if they could finish the season with that.
Yeah, I can't see Ferrari winning a race this year, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, let's see. All right, and so that's it on the Ferrari front. Let's move on to the big news of the weekend, right?
Big controversy.
Yeah, as you said, you felt like Max blew a gasket when
blew more than a gasket.
Yeah, what's your take on the old Max George incident and the penalty?
I think the penalty was too lenient. The penalty should have been much harsher because, again, what he did was a deliberate act. You read the steward's report, they pretty much acknowledged that he was upset at the fact that he had to give of what happened at turn 1 first, and then having to give the position back. He was completely upset, which means he wasn't in control of his emotions, and at that point he also wasn't thinking properly. So he reacted out of anger, and Nico Rosberg said it's right there and then. He should have been black flagged, because what he did was he deliberately ran into somebody. It was lucky that the contact was wheel to wheel. So, and again, it's not the first time we've seen Max do this, where he feels aggrieved and then he uses the car as a weapon to exact revenge or to let out his frustration. You can't have that in this sort of environment.
So my issue, there's a few things, right? Because I did ask. When you look at when Sebastian swerved into Lewis in was it Baku? Behind the safety car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Under safety car conditions.
He should have been black flagged as well.
Yeah, he should have. However, he didn't. But the penalty was what again? Remind me.
I think he got a 10-second stop-go penalty.
He got a 10-second stop-go, right?
And when you work it out, it was over. It was like a 30-second penalty.
Right. So my question to the stewards is how an incident on the safety car conditions brings a harsher penalty than an incident under racing conditions.
Well, okay. I think here's my thing. Under safety car, the race is nullified. So you're under control. You're in a much more controlled environment under the safety car, because you have to monitor. You're going at 10% your normal speed, and to do what Seb did was far more egregious than what Max did, because again, it was a safety car condition, and you pull out from behind, and you then deliberately drove into someone. In a racing environment, you're not governed by the safety car anymore. You're governed by the rules of engagement or whatever it is, the racing rules, whatever. So what Max did still requires a black flag, because again, it was a deliberate act, and he has a history of doing stuff like that. You can go back, Jeddah 2021, he did the same thing to Lewis. You can look at his move, granted You can go Brazil 2022 with Lewis. The turn one, was it turn one? Turn one, turn two incident where he drove basically in the side of Lewis, and then after the race, he pretty much said, "Yeah, I knew we were gonna crash, but I didn't care." So he has a tendency when he feels like, and George Russell spoke about this, I believe it was last year, and people laughed at George and said, "Oh, he was being soft." But George said, "Look, Max is like this. When things don't go his way, and he has to deal with adversity, his first thought is to lash out with anger and rage. And at some point, you're gonna have to nip that in the bud. But it's too late for that now, because the FIA as a sport has allowed this behavior to manifest for far too long, and they've done nothing about it. And as such, Max feels like, well, I can do these things and get away with it. I know I'm not gonna get punished harshly, and so what? I don't care. Yes, the 10-second cost him massively because it dropped him from third to 10th. He only got a point, so now he's a good chunk of points behind. He's more than a race win now behind Oscar, and pretty much the same behind Lando in the championship. But then an example needs to be set. In Monza 2021, when him and Lewis had that incident, what did he say? This is what happens when you don't leave a space. Dude, you park the car on someone's head, and that's your statement. When you went for a move that you pretty much knew wasn't gonna come off.
So let me get to that in a sec. So when I was so just so listeners could have a understanding of where I was going when I said between Seb incidents on the incident on the safety cars, under the safety car compared to Max in racing conditions. I'm looking at cause and effect, right? Because those two incidents, if they were to go really awry on the higher speeds, the Max incident probably could have turned out way worse. So I guess that's what I'm looking at. Like, I think if you do that under racing conditions, the penalty should be way harsher.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Which is why I said he should have been disqualified.
Right.
Nico Rosberg said the same thing. He should have been disqualified. So people want to make excuses for it.
So that's where I was going with that, just so listeners have an understanding of what I was getting to with that. So now to your point of FIA stewards, everyone allowing this to fester, right? And not only let's keep it 100. It's not just only them. Teams also allow this to fester, right? Because
in terms of what way?
Because at the end of the teams are the ones ultimately. If there's no team, there's no sport, right?
Yeah.
So if the teams realize that there's this one driver on the grid that could cause our drivers harm if things doesn't go his way, he just loses it. They got to shout at the top of the roof. They got to sit with the governing body and be like, hey, we're not going to accept this on the grid. So all of them should be held accountable for allowing this type of behavior.
No, but again,
right?
Teams can go ahead and say whatever they want to say to the FIA or whoever it is. But I mean,
but let me ask this.
Hold on. Yeah. Andrea Stella came out and said the same thing. Said these things that Max does sometimes and gets away with should have been dealt with and more harshly when they happened, but nothing was done about it. So now this is the situation.
That's my point. When these things happen, was he saying that in those moments? That's my problem.
Yeah, but again, what does the team saying that doesn't do anything? Because again, the sports governing body are
but I am not convinced. I am not convinced that if these teams who have drivers on the grid who could become a victim of this, that could cause death, right? You can't tell me that if they're coming to him like, nah, we got to have a meeting and this got to stop, right? Yeah, they've got power, bro, right? But what I come to find is that it's a situation of if it ain't happening to my driver, I don't really care. That's what I'm getting from them.
I don't know if that's the case. It could be. But what would be interesting is if we could go back to the era where they would broadcast the driver meetings when they actually meet the race director. and see where we could hear the issues that drivers were bringing up before, and when this was before pre-Charlie Whiting's death, all right? So it would be interesting to see if these things are being discussed in the drivers' meetings, because if that's, and I think they are being discussed, but again, when it comes to Max, these things are somewhat dealt with differently. And you go back again, I use Jeddah as an example. Stewart's report basically said they could see the incident with Lewis, that he actually hit the brakes. They showed that he lifted and he decelerated, and then there was a sudden application of brakes. I think they said something like 5 bar of pressure. 5 bar of pressure is good enough to stop a road car, right? That's not even good enough to stop a Formula 1 car dead stop. 5 bar pressure on a road car pretty much brings it to a full stop. And they could see where he did that. But what did they give him? I believe he got what? 5-second penalty, I think, or a 10-second penalty. That's what they gave him during the race. So I'm thinking, well, you can actually see what he did, but you gave him the most lenient of penalty. And not even just that. On Sunday, they gave him the 10 seconds, but they also gave him 3 penalty points. And that's interesting to me, because he already had 8 points on his license. And if you get 12, you get banned for a race. The last person that happened to was Kevin Magnussen. I can't remember what year it was. But they gave him 3 points. So now he only has 11 points. And 2 of those points drops off the end of this month, which is after the Australian Grand Prix. Now, what if he goes to Canada and does something silly again, and he gets a penalty? Are they just going to give him a penalty and no points? Because you get any point he gets between now and the end of this month means he's going to miss a race. Are they going to do that? That's where my thing now comes in. Are they going to be bold enough to say, yeah, Max, sorry, mate, we're going to have to ban you for a race?
I don't see that.
You did. Neither do
I don't trust them enough.
Neither do
They've showed me enough for me to believe that they will never do that.
Exactly, and I think many people have that same opinion. And again, it's why? Because it's Max. Anybody else that would happen to, I believe if anybody else had done what he did on Sunday, and they had 8 points on the license, they'd have gotten 4 points. I genuinely believe they would have gotten 4 points. I think they gave him the 3 points just because they didn't want to ban him for a race.
But do we know the points allocation? How it's allocated? Is it a 2-point, 3-point system, or they just decide?
I think they just decide how much points they want to allocate. I don't know if there's a table that says whatever.
We need to find it out, because it should be a table. Because if it's not a table, it means that you leave it up to manipulation.
Yeah, it says it's an arbitrary thing.
Yeah, you leave it up to be manipulated. And with the FIA and these two, I do not trust them one bit. They'll manipulate.
But like I said, the thing for me is Max lets himself down when he does things like, he's too good of a driver to be doing stupid things like this. And he's been in the sport long enough to know that, I need to, this is not right.
Yeah.
Attack Ocon in Brazil 2018. Even before that, I remember 1 year at Spa, where he pretty much somewhat kind of like brake tested Kimi on the Kemmel Straight going up to Lake Holmes, that Kimi had to back out, and he was on the radio screaming like, yo, you see what he did, etc., etc. So I feel like he has a sense of entitlement, and he's been emboldened by not only by his team but also by the sport, especially when you have the president of the sport telling Christian Horner that, yo, I'm your only friend in this sport. Means that
they created the monster, bro, and now they can't. They pull that genie out the bottle and they can't put it back in.
Exactly. They can't. There's nothing they can do. And And again, the only thing they can do now is ban him for a race.
Yeah, and
That's all they can do now.
I could look in the camera and I could. Yeah, go on.
Or what's the likelihood of him getting that 1 point before the end of this month to get a race ban? It's very unlikely. Even if he does something stupid, they're not going to do it because I think they're just scared of him, and they're scared of Red Bull. They don't want to. Because look at was it Mexico last year when they gave him that 30-second penalty? Look at the reaction from him. Look at the reaction from the team. But it was justified. They're the only people who I've seen when they get penalty, they pretty much run screaming to everybody, screaming say like it's unfair or whatever. But yeah,
basically, it's crazy that Ben Sulayem say that, bro. You know what? He's a fraud anyway, and I could say Ben Sulayem is a fraud. He's just trying to turn the whole. Now he's talking about how does the drivers make way more money than people in the FIA. I'm like, what?
Nobody comes to Formula One to gives a damn about who works in the FIA. People come there to see the drivers, not you.
Isn't it that it's a non-profit, right?
Yeah, it's an NPO. And
So-
the position of the FIA president is on salary, so what they get is an allowance,
And all
an
these
expense allowance, basically.
and all these racing series, all these racing teams, team bosses, you're just sitting and watching this guy just turning the FIA into a dictatorship, bro.
It's pretty much what he's
And
doing.
he's gutting that thing out, and they're just sitting there and watching. That's why I said, man, a lot of these guys, yeah,
I mean, the teams can voice their opinion as much as they want, but
it's just, and I'm always gonna be saying something about it, right? All of these foolishness that I see goes on in F1 with Stewart, and and this is why I'm always gonna be vocal in it, right? Until the day I don't have to pay to watch F1, I'm paying money. I'm paying for subscription. I'm paying all of this, so I'm paying money. So yeah, I'm gonna have a big mouth because it's not free. You're not giving me F1 for free.
Yep, not anymore, anyway.
Exactly. Put it there.
Watching it.
Take it from behind the paywall, then cool, I'll shut up. Do whatever y'all want. Be the frauds y'all want to be. But as long as I'm paying a penny out of my pocket, I'm always going to say something when I see injustices, bro. Like, yeah, if you don't want people to say anything, yeah, turn into a free sport. You know, like, as long as when I go to the races, I have to pay for expensive hotels, because when F1 is in town, everything is just quadrupled. Got to pay for expensive ticket, expensive food. So it's not for free. Don't think you're entertaining me for free. I'm paying. I'm a paying customer. So when you see people like Ben Sulayem doing a lot of fraudulent stuff, the stewards just doing what the hell they want to put the sport that we love in disrepute, I'm always going to say something. I do not care.
And I think we have to. But, just to end on this whole Max thing, like I said, Max is too good of a driver.
Yeah, he is.
To be doing dumb shit like
He is.
And this is what people will rub people the wrong way. You see what I mean? If he didn't do anything like this, I think he'd be looked at different. But, and then he has this attitude of blasé attitude about like, I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care. Because Rachel Brooks asked him about it. Was the first question Rachel Brooks asked him about. And he went like, I'd rather talk about the race. And I'm thinking, dude, the incident happened in the race. It was the most poignant or the most controversial part or interesting part of the whole entire race. Obviously, you're going to have to answer questions about it. So to talk about, I want to talk, dude, that was the most interesting part of the race. So we have to talk about it. But he couldn't help himself being an ass. Because it's like, I don't care. Okay, it happened. I don't care. Don't ask me any questions about it. Ask me about something. But how can you but
hey man, just so you know, the guy is the same. His attitude is the same evening sim racing.
Yeah, bro, don't even remind me, because we all saw that sim
It's
race
crazy.
where he
He does the same
took
thing.
someone out.
And so to say that, right, 4-time world champion, which is why when you see someone, this is why when you see someone like an Oscar carries himself, it's something to look at and be like, wow, this guy's never won an F1 championship, right? He's in the process of trying to do it this year. Oscar, I'm talking about, right? But when you look at just how he carries himself like he's the 4-time world champion. Just the way he's just super calm. But Max, like, I'm like, bro, you need to stop throwing these red misses, man. Like, at the end of the day, you're too talented to be doing these dumb stuff on the track.
Yeah, you're tarnishing the image when you do stuff like that, and this idea, people saying, oh yeah, we like that, that's hard. That's not hard racing, bro. That's not racing. That isn't racing. That's just someone who cannot control their emotions the moment things don't go their way.
Well, you know what? If they don't nip it in the bud, right? If they do not nip it in the bud and start pulling Max in, I don't want to say it.
Yeah, they're not.
But the same people who are telling you it's hard racing, they're going to be the same one crying.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because when he was doing the same pushing up people off track, when he was doing that to Lewis, and everyone was talking about it, saying, yo, that's not whatever, they were pretty much telling you to shut up. But when he does it to one of their fave, they start to complain, and we're like, yo, don't complain, because we've been telling you all along, this is how this guy race. The rules on the rules about overtaking, whatever, it's because of Max. It's because of him. They're the reason why this rule is in place, and it would not have need to been had they actually
penalized him
when he.
Yeah, if they had penalized him when he wouldn't even have to change the rules.
Yeah, but again, it's in the name of entertainment why they didn't do it. So, like you said, they've created this monster. They've let the genie out the bottle, and they can't close that. They can't get it back in the bottle. So,
Yeah, but yeah, that's it on that part, Max, and the whole Red Bull situation. Actually, just to as we're on Red Bull, quick one. So this is strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the wrong call to put him on the hard tires?
Well, he didn't have any tires left, for one.
He didn't have a used soft?
No, he didn't. Because I think he went into the race with one new soft, one new medium, one new hard. I think he had 2 or 3 used softs. So he did a 3-stop. So he did his first 2 stints were on soft tires.
Yeah.
Right? Then he did a medium, and then he went on a soft, I believe, for the final stint. He was on a soft for the final stint. So he was on a new soft. I can understand why they put him on the hard, because it's something that he didn't have to manage the tire. He could just push on that tire for the whole remainder of the race. Question is, it was never a good tire last year. That's why nobody didn't use it, and there's a reason why no one used it this weekend. Even Yuki, who started from the pit lane, I believe, never used that tire. So it was never really a good tire. I think what they probably should have done, they should have just left him out on the used soft that he had, and give him a better chance of trying to defend his position. Because I think the reason why he had that snap at the start of the safety
talk about a save.
Yeah, brilliant save.
Brilliant save.
They messed everything. Because again, just to slightly go back, he was the driver of the race up until his brain fade moment. But I think the snap he had was because of the hard tires.
Yeah.
It didn't. There wasn't enough heat. It wasn't up to temperature. So he was trying to do whatever he could, and that happened. But I think maybe they should have just left him out on the soft tires, and then let's see what he could do. If they pass him, they pass him.
And if he, as you said, if he didn't go on to do that foolishness with George, right, we probably would have been talking about the save.
Yeah.
That would have been like, wow, what a great situation by Max, right? What a great save. Would have been talking about that. But yeah, you're right. So let me ask you this, right? Because in that moment in the race, we spoke about strategy, right? And you were saying that it was interesting to you because of the strategy Red Bull throwing an alternative, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just because you're in strategy. I'm actually throw. It was just something that I was thinking about over the weekend after watching other racing series, right? And not gonna stay long on it, but I just need your opinion, right? Because I know what mine is. Do you think when it comes on to strategies, right? Do you think of IndyCar, NASCAR, F1? What strategists do you think have the hardest job on a weekend to win a race on a strategy? Of those three series.
IndyCar, F1,
NASCAR,
and
F1.
NASCAR.
Let me see if you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking.
I'd probably say NASCAR.
I put F1 last in terms of strategy.
I'll probably say NASCAR because, again, so many different things happen in NASCAR. It's more cars on the track as well. I think the NASCAR strategy is probably the more complicated one to deal with than anyone.
I think I put F1 third on the list.
Yeah, because you have to factor in refueling and all of these things and so on. And I think, definitely I put NASCAR first.
Yeah, because
F1 is pretty much...
It's one of two most of the time, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much straightforward stuff. Again, there's such a performance gap between teams and whatnot. It kind of like makes it easier. But when you watch IndyCar, because again, you have the difference in tire compounds, and they don't have tire warmers in IndyCar. So you're talking about you could come out on a course if you pit first and your tires are up to temperature first, you have a massive advantage over someone who just pitted and are trying to probably take 2, 3, or 4 corners to get the tires up to temperature. So within that time they're trying to do that, you have an opportunity to pass. So yeah, I definitely think I'd go NASCAR, IndyCar, and then Formula 1.
Yeah, because the reason why I thought about it is just that whilst F1 is the pinnacle of motorsports, right? Because we watch all categories, right? I just like to pick out certain things that there's other categories who have a tougher job on a weekend to do, right? To accomplish a race win. And I just wanted to shout out these series because I see where these teams, they have to put in. It's just that the task that they have and the strategists in these series is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, because NASCAR has how many cars is on?
A lot.
A lot. Plus, it's an oval race, so your positions are swapping at every practice. Every lap position are swapping and so on.
Yeah, because and that's the thing, when a lot of people, unless you're a motorsport person, you wouldn't understand. Because they're just going around in a circle. But when you sit and you watch that thing and you see the strategy playing out, and sometimes the guy with the fastest car is not even finishing in the top 10, it's crazy, right? Yeah. And you're like, man. And a lot of times those races are just win on pure strategies. So, it's I respect these series a lot based on...
Because you have more overtaking in those series. With Formula 1, once you're at the front of the, front of the grid, you pretty much know in Formula 1 the teams that can win a race.
Yeah.
And who will win a race. In NASCAR, in IndyCar, it's not you have an idea who can and will win a race, but you get the odd surprise. You don't get the odd surprise with you can get the odd surprise of someone who's never won a race all year. Case in point, like Takuma Sato winning Indy 500. That's a surprise.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that sort of surprise in Formula 1 where you go, oh, crap. Hulkenberg in a Kick Sauber wins Monaco. That's never going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. That was just a caveat I wanted to throw in because it's just that there's just, whilst there's Formula One, there's a lot of other series out there who should be respected as well for what they do. And
they have their own. They're in their own lane.
Yeah.
So
It's just that because a lot of people see it as like a bush league. I'm like, nah, these guys actually have to put in work. Like, whilst it's not an international series, these are actually great racing series.
Yeah, I mean, V8 Supercars in Australia. It's one of the. I think it's the best tin top racing anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and whilst a lot of technology in Formula One is like top tier, there's like if you look at like an IndyCar, they run. The fuel that they run is more advanced than the F1 fuel. They're running on 100%
synthetic.
This new fuel that what's it called? Is it biofuel?
Yeah, but Formula One's going to that next year, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like you would have thought that F1, you would have never thought IndyCar was there already, right?
Yeah. Because
people are looking like, oh, this is no, but they've got things that they're doing well and things that they're pushing at the forefront of motorsports as well. So. Respect to those other categories. They're doing their thing. They put in work, and I think they deserve that respect. So that was just a caveat I wanted to throw in because we were speaking about strategy. So Stroll misses a race.
Yeah, because I think they said it goes back to the wrist injury he had. I think it was last year he had that wrist injury. But the thing, so he's been battling with this they said for something like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like it was probably longer than that. And it was a bit unfortunate. But my question is, they must have had some idea about this in advance. Why didn't they just take the precaution and kind of like take the opportunity and put Djokovic in the car this weekend to see what he can do? Because at some point because he has to leave that team. He has to make a decision because since he's won F2, he hasn't really done anything.
Does it come back to what we spoke about in the last one?
Which was?
They probably just don't believe in him. I don't know why they haven't if they don't believe in him.
Well, they don't have a space.
Huh?
They don't have a space.
No, I mean, you'd have thought that if Lance Stroll is dealing with a wrist injury, right? When was the last race?
Monaco, last week. Because it's a triple header.
Okay. So, as you said, if they really wanted to put him in the car just to give him a run to see what he's like in race conditions, the fact that Stroll is suffering from a wrist injury, he's not going to root up trees with a wrist injury in the race weekend, right? So at that point, why didn't you just give Djokovic an opportunity to go through a race weekend? The fact that they didn't do it tells me everything that I need to know.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a case of they don't believe in him, but there could be other reasons. But what I'm trying to say is, I think they probably knew there were signs of this, that, this issue Lance was having before this weekend. I think they probably could have just gone, we have nothing to lose, we have nothing to gain. Let's just, as a precaution, let's put Djokovic in this weekend, give you an extra week to kind of like try and mend rather than put you in. And it affected the team in terms of potential of point scoring, right? Because Stroll did the whole practice and qualifying, it meant that they couldn't replace him for the race. So they went into the race with one car, and you're kind of like, so you've reduced your opportunity of scoring points to just one driver now.
That's what that daddy owns the team does.
Yeah.
I think unless Djokovic was racing somewhere else this weekend, he's their reserve driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless he had other commitments, and I'm sure he would pass up on what he had this weekend to race in F1.
Of course, yeah.
So the fact that they got him there sitting there for so long, and this opportunity came up and they still didn't put him in the car. As I said, I guess I'm just looking at this through tunnel vision. I'm just looking at like, bro, it seems like they don't believe in the dude, bro. Because why would you not take this opportunity to put him through a full race weekend to see what he can do? And it will give you an opportunity to see where he needs to improve, or if, you know what, this ain't it.
Well, I guess, because I think I saw something today where they were talking about, what did they say? He's thinking about his future and Le Mans and all of that. So I think at some point he's just gonna get to it and like, yeah, I need to move on, because you can't just be there not doing anything.
Is he the one? Is he gonna drive their Royal Endurance, their WEC Challenger?
Then Aston is racing Le Mans this year, right?
I think because they're running the Valkyrie.
Yeah, I don't know who who's driving their Le Mans program, so I can't really say. I can't really say.
Yeah, because I'm just. It just doesn't make any sense to not put him in the car this past weekend. Yeah, he's not even on their list.
Yeah, so that means he's not part of that program.
It looks like they're running for the FIA WEC series. They're running a dude from Britain, Ari Tinknell, Tom Gamble, and Marcus Sorensen and Alex Riberas.
Okay, so then he's definitely not part of it.
So he needs to move on.
Yeah, well, he will.
Yeah, because
that's what I just wanted to say about the Lance Stroll thing. You know, it's a bit. I wish him speedy recovery. The next race is his home race in Canada, so
yeah,
I'm sure they're going to be doing everything possible to get him to the race.
Which would have made perfect sense for him not even to turn up in Spain. Just rehab, preparing yourself for Canada. But
rest and give him an extra, because it would have been 3 weeks rather than 2. So just give him an extra week to kind of like, you know, deal with this thing. But at the same time, you know, on our last point, his teammate finally scored a point.
Yeah, go do your Alonso rant.
So his teammate finally scored a point, so I can get off his back now. I mean, it was a bit again. Thank heavens for the safety car, because if it wasn't for the safety car, he's pitting for that soft tire. I think he had a new soft tire. No, I don't remember. Yeah, the two in front of those in front of him, I don't think they pitted, so his soft was much fresher. Without that, he was never going to score a point, but he's finally on the board. He can now relax, you know, and he can go back to throwing digs at people. But you know, it is what it is. So I can let him off the hook now for these things. But I'm still not taking my foot off his neck. I'm forever, yeah, anti Alonso. But after that, just some notable mentions.
Yeah,
Hulkenberg scored Sauber's best finish of the season. Actually, it's the best finish for a long time. He finished fifth? No, he finished sixth. But then when the penalty was applied to Max, he actually moved up to fifth. I mean, I think that's the most points I'd have to go back and check. I think that's the most points Sauber has scored in what? Because they've scored points. Every team has scored points this year, and I think is it every driver? No, not every driver has scored points. I think Bortoletti still hasn't scored any points as yet, but every team has now scored points. So that's what, fifth gives you 10 points, I believe it is. Fourth gives you 12, fifth gives you 10. So that's a massive all for Sauber, which I think they're now close to Haas in the championship. Let me just double check that I tell you just to be on the safe side because I don't want to impart wrong information. So let me just hold on. So they're currently actually, wow, just at 10 points. They're now level on points with Aston Martin and ahead of Alpine because Alpine has only scored 11 points. Haas now, Sauber is now on 16 points. I don't know, joint. Uh, Actually, they're ahead of us. They're eighth because they've scored a higher finishing position than Aston. Because Aston's highest position, I believe, was sixth.
Where's Haas?
Huh?
Where's Haas?
Haas is seventh right now. Haas doing all right. They have 26 points, which is two less than Racing Bulls. With so
They could take that scalp by the end of the season.
well, it's possible. It's possible, but I think the Racing Bulls is definitely a better car than the Haas.
Because it's Bierman and
Yeah, because Isaac Hadjar doing his thing.
Yeah.
And also, Carlos Sainz was on a 10 race because he has finished the points, scored points in every Spanish Grand Prix, the last 10 Spanish Grand Prix. I think that's how long he's been in F1. That came to an end because did he have a name coming together with, I can't remember what happened, but yeah.
It was a nightmare for Williams.
Yeah, because they didn't score points with either car. I think Albon had to retire because he had an incident and they actually told him to retire, but when he came in, they gave him a penalty, so they sent him back out and just like, yo, let's just do the penalty because if you didn't do the penalty, you get a good position coming Canada.
And it's crazy because look how well that car was going in Imola. Is it Imola?
Not just Imola, even in Monaco. So, I guess, teams have these moments. Mercedes had theirs. So it's just one of them things for Williams. I think when I get back to summer, like even next week next week in Canada, they might be back in the running again, challenging the likes of Racing Bulls and probably Haas. So yeah,
all right.
Those are the notable mentions, and so we move on to rate the race. Because you said Monaco 2.0, I'm like, yeah, nah, that's a bit harsh.
That was harsh.
It's definitely nothing is comes close to Monaco, man. So I rate this race just for the Max Verstappen shithouse race. I'm gonna give it a 6.
Yeah.
Just for that, I'm gonna give it a 6. Outside of that, there wasn't much more to write home about, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 5.5. Giving it a 5.5.
So you're not that far off.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5.5. So I guess that contradicts the Monaco 2.0. I guess, yeah, because just the last safety car just actually did something. So
I don't think it was just the last safety car. It was interesting to see what Max and that 3-stop strategy, how it was going to play out. And I think that created a bit of an interest in it as well. But just one more notable mentions. Kimi Antonelli now, he's on he hasn't scored a single point in this triple header. Retired in Imola with an engine problem. We know what happened in Monaco, pretty much qualified badly. I think he finished dead last. And again, he had another engine issue where he was comfortably in the points. So that's 2 engine issues, actually 3 in the last 3 races, because George has an engine issue in Imola as well. Because I'm sure he retired. George retired from Imola. So he had
wasn't there another Mercedes car that had issues as well?
Yeah, I think Alonso. But I think the Alonso one was in where was he?
No, I'm not even talking about when was it. I'm just talking about the Mercedes power unit, the powertrain.
Yeah, Alonso had a power unit issue in Monaco as well. So we've seen, and it's kind of odd because we're in the final year of the regulations. And to see Mercedes have this much reliability issues, and I think even the Williams has encountered one. The only one who hasn't really encountered any yet is McLaren.
Is it because
So-
of the last run of the regulation? Maybe they're just,
What?
pushing ultimate power and everything,
Well,
pushing peak power and everything. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying.
I don't think it's a case of pushing peak power, because I think some of the issues had to be ERS related. But when you look at Kimi's, what do you call it? When you look at Kimi's, it looked like you saw a puff of white smoke, so it looked like it was an engine issue. Alonso, I know they said the
Spark plug?
issue Alonso had in Monaco, it was something to do with a spark plug, and it blew one of the cylinders. So basically, his ice was basically
Done for. Yeah.
It's gone. So,
All right.
so Mercedes, whatever issue Mercedes dealing with right now in terms of that reliability, it's not good. And worst of all, it happened when the head of Daimler was in attendance as well. But it's a final year. These engines are going to get thrown in the skip anyway, so might as well just blow them up now. You're not going to use them again next year.
Yeah.
So those are my notable mentions. And as you said, we did our rate the race already.
Yeah. So
Next on the calendar is what? Canadian Grand Prix on weekend of the 13th to the 15th.
yeah, and then on that we'll wrap, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Going to Lewis's backyard. Hopefully Ferrari decide to give him a good car. You can't embarrass them. I've been saying something all along. It's very likely that Lewis's run of having a podium in every year of his Formula One career could come to an end this year. And yeah, that happens.
all right, and so
I'm heading to Maranello.
all right, and so all right, so we're gonna wrap on that. Once again, thank y'all for listening to the Grand Prix Project Podcast with me, your host Andre Miller and Thanos, as homeboy call you, Wolfpack.
Yeah, Thanos.
Big up
My guy,
Wolfpack.
Thanos.
Yeah, big up Wolfpack, right? So
Yeah,
once
man,
again,
Wolfpack will be appearing on the show at some point in the future. Definitely, that's a must.
yeah,
That's a
so
must.
please follow us on the Grand Prix Project Pod and X, and the Grand Prix Project Podcast on YouTube. We're starting to release videos slowly but surely, right? Please follow us on those platforms, right? And on Instagram, we're at the Grand Prix Project Podcast, and the backup page is the Grand Prix Project. So yeah, those are our socials. Please follow us. Please like on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment. If there's anything that we say that you want to challenge or you just want to have a conversation, motorsport guys, this is have it. Just at us on X, and we could start a conversation. If you felt that we're too, if you think we're too harsh in certain with our observations or our opinions, or if you think it's fair, or if you just want to chime in and give your side of the story, we don't know everything. Right, so
because what's our motto?
Our unimportant opinions are important.
Exactly.
Right, so let's start a conversation. So once again, thank y'all for listening. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Grand Prix Project Podcast.